Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. And today is the third part of a series we're doing on the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas. And we've got three guests. We've got Emma Barry, Emmett Williams, and David Shaw, who share their thoughts about what they've seen at the Consumer Electronics event, how it's likely to impact the fitness industry, and what lessons we can take away from the event. So for an insight into the future of fitness and technology, please enjoy this week's episode. So, I'm here with Emma Barry.
Hey.
CES. What are you doing here, Emma?
Oh, I'm learning. I love going to the odd convention where I don't have to present and just soak it all up.
Yeah. So, what about the event do you think is relevant for the traditional health and fitness space?
Well, it's interesting. So we went to dinner last night. Thank you, Emmett and the team at Myzone, and there were 11 fitness professionals that we could find at this entire event of 200,000 people. So it's a great.
Is that how many is there?
That's how many here will come through the event. So it takes over all of Vegas, of course. So what has it got to do with our market? We've got quite a small representation here. We've been at the Wearables Summit today, which is more applicable, but really I'm looking at all the stuff that's happening around the edge of life in general, because ultimately everything's going to be affected by the big social trends, I guess. So that's why I'm here. How it applies to our fitness industry, I think AI, 5G, VR, AR, digital health, all of these aspects are huge focuses in the tech sector, and they are going to influence us in the fitness sector. So that's what I'm doing here, wearables in particular, and I think we've been slow to adopt so many things in an online, offline world, and that's what this is all about. What's interesting here is that they struggle to put the human in the equation, whereas in the fitness industry we're so focused on the human. But I think there's a happy medium, and that's why I'm here, is to sort of find where those bridging gaps are.
So this is obviously, I guess, a tech industry focused event, so it's not just health and fitness. What do you see as some of the big trends that are coming from, I suppose, the tech world that are going to spill out into I guess other areas of health, wellness, into that area?
Well, I think being technology, I think it's the big players. It's GAFA, so it's Google, it's Amazon, it's Facebook, and it's Apple. And Apple's been the elephant in the room in every single keynote and every single session that I've been in, because if you think about it, they've now got TV, they have got music, they're taking over content with the new hiring of HMO exec, and they have a big background in fitness, having partnered with Nike and all the work that Jay and the team have done over the years, but also in the fact that fitness is just another piece of content, and content really is that human interaction. And so I just think that's coming, from all of those guys. Google, of course, has just acquired Fitbit. There's a lot of people watching that brand to see, with all the privacy and looking after all the data management and things like that. So I think our biggest competition will be tech, because it's the platform and the delivery mechanism that they have that's scalable, that gets to all of us. And we all know when Apple does an update and it all gets pushed to our phones and our tablets. And so I think that's the biggest thing. Connected fitness has been huge. So we've just come out of a big session relating to Peloton, Echelon, of course, which is a more affordable version of Peloton, Strava, all the work that Nike, etc., and those guys have done in the past. So I think that's been a big thrust of this event as well. And then there's sort of and you would have seen this walking the trade show floor, so the sleep, there's a lot of work going into sleep, stress management, biometrics. We've come out of some pretty heavy, very smart people here. I have no idea what they're talking about, but lots of doctors and real thought leaders in technology, but also in medicine and biometrics, and trying to take tech away from the wrist and closer to the body. So we're seeing that through wearable clothing, we're seeing it through adhesives to the skin that sit very close. There's been some talk about injectables, so just stuff that's getting closer and closer to your body that can give you real-time data. The issue now, of course, is people don't really know what to do with that data, because even, I think Apple released a report which said, here's a whole bunch of stuff and here's something that you're at risk of, and then 80% of that audience not doing anything with it. So there's a big gap between, we've got the data gives us information, the information gives us knowledge, the knowledge gives us wisdom, but now we don't know what to do about it to lead a happier and healthier life, and that's one of the gaps. Yeah.
I guess one of the things I've noticed is it is such a big industry and there's so much money coming into it. I suppose if you look at, again, I'll use the word traditional fitness industry, but it's pretty small in comparison to that. What do you think, how do you think you can play in that space? Because I guess if you can spend millions developing an app or some technology that's going to work with your iPhone, and then suddenly the big boys change the rules of the game, and then all that is just wasted. How do you think the sort of smaller players can use what's happening to their advantage, but not waste a lot of money and get left behind?
So I think there's two things. One is acknowledge that the moment someone walks out of your facility, if you're a bricks and mortar, they are using something. Like the majority of people are doing at-home workouts, on-demand, digital workouts are one of the massive trends right now. Like they're in triple-digit growth, like it's just out of control. So now, there's two parts of innovation, right? You can be at the bleeding edge, and that's very expensive and very hard, and given that that's not what we do, I wouldn't recommend you do that. So it's kind of like, be aware that you need to have a digital impression or not, but be very careful if you're not going to have one that someone else is going to grab your purse and your awareness when you leave. And some of that content is getting very good. So it's just a risk, so I'd keep an eye on it, and then maybe to what your budget can stretch to, play in that space. So we all know that once something becomes commoditized or popular, or they're talking about all the garments now, which are the wearable, are literally sitting at $2,000 a piece, so you've got to wait until that comes down. So I think it would be acknowledge that it's here, acknowledge that you're going to be losing your membership to someone else if you don't provide a solution in that space. Try and find a solution that is affordable at this point, and then keep an eye out for when you can get the system that's been fully developed by all the people who have the money for you to be able to slip into. But the big message that was coming from wearables today is at the moment you've lost your audience, you perhaps have lost them forever. So do what you can to hold on to them, whether it's even just streaming. There's lots of little software companies that are actually able to stream your content at relatively cost effectively. Maybe do that until you can leap to a better platform or something like that. Other people like Barry's Bootcamp are just saying, screw it, we're just going to own bricks and mortar, and we're going to be really good at that. And they don't have a wearables representation right now, and they're not really looking at doing online as well at this point. But that may change in the future.
What would you say are the big brands, after being here for a couple of days, to keep an eye on and to look out for, that are likely to be quite dominant in the, again, health, fitness and technology space?
Yeah, I think that's interesting, and most of the brands here I'm not even familiar with, and a lot of the startups, so I did a lot of time going through the startups, Eureka Park yesterday, and I can't even remember half their names. People are using acronyms I can't remember, because a lot of these guys are startup, and they're often the software company that then gets bought by the bigger company and bought on. So a lot of people are just here trying to either get funding, or they're trying to be bought by one of the big guys. So I actually can't rattle off all the names, but there's just there were 1,500 new startups since I was here last year, right across the sector. So yeah, I can't even give the names, I'm sorry on that one.
No. I think what you mentioned earlier, that is it Google that's brought Fitbit now as well?
Yeah.
So probably Google and Facebook are going to be...
Of course, consolidation, a lot of people are talking about what's Facebook going to do, because they were in a bit of a bidding war for Fitbit, and so therefore you've got social platforms mindfully getting into fitness, mindfully getting into something that they know has a big share of wallet, because I think in the next year or so, we go, or very soon, America, for example, goes 50% overweight or obese. So all this tech and all the stuff that we're doing still is not shifting the needle on true health, and that's also a problem that everyone's been very focused on here. And of course Apple's very good at that. So they've talked a lot about behavioural change. So we've got all these big changes happening in technology, but actually it's the small things that happen in your daily life that nudge you towards a better life. And so it's a very subtle art, and we have not mastered it for people who are not motivated. We're still only motivating the motivated. motivated. People like us who actually enjoy working out and are in relatively good shape and have never let it go. But we're now looking at the great unwashed of people who couldn't think of anything worse, and we've just got these bits of technology, but they're not coming together in a seamless way that is meaningful. Meaningful's been a really big word that's been thrown around in a number of the panels. It's not meaningful, therefore I don't act on it. So we're still not really affecting behavioural change in a way that's going to get the people doing the things that are healthy for them.
Excellent. Well, Emma, thanks very much.
You're
thanks
welcome.
for your help, and I'll see you at the next event somewhere around the world.
Of course.
So, Emmett, we're here with Emmett Williams, president of Myzone.
Yes.
USA or the whole group now?
The entire galaxy.
We're going to upset Dave.
Yeah.
So what are you doing here, Emmett?
Well, it's CES. It's the second week of the year, and we head up here every year.
Right.
And the reason we head up here is to have a few meetings with suppliers. Our semiconductor supplier is exhibiting here. Our manufacturer from China is exhibiting here. We talk to our second source supplier over here as well, and get the lowdown on what's happening with technology.
Right. So how many years have you been coming to CES?
We came here and exhibited back in 2015, I think it was. So this must be about our fifth year. We don't exhibit anymore, but we do come back.
Right. So
Yeah.
what's the relevance of CES to the traditional fitness space? Why are you guys here outside of just sort of being involved with like your suppliers, for example?
Yeah, good question. So I think any growth comes down to innovation, and a lot of innovation comes down to technology, and this is the mecca of technology. All the sensors are on display, all the old sensors that have been around for a long time, but the new sensors that have just been developed. The way data is being leveraged has changed over the years, and we want to keep at the forefront of that. And really understanding how others are applying technology to use cases to see if there's any opportunity for us to apply that back to our audience, which is the commercial fitness space.
Right. So what sort of trends have you seen this year that probably haven't been around, again, specifically to health and wellness?
Yeah, okay, so 5 years ago when I first came here, there were two massive booths, and it was Fitbit and it was Under Armour. And you might remember back then, Under Armour, they just purchased MyFitnessPal and Endomondo and Met My Run, and they were on the march, and their booth was gigantic. Fitbit's was even bigger. This year they're not here, right? And the exhibitors that have taken over that space from a health and wellness perspective has absolutely been sleep and recovery. That's the first thing that hit me in the face when I walked in yesterday.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you say sleep, then what is it, like wearables, or what sort of stuff are you seeing in that category?
Yeah, okay. So there is the sensing of sleep, which would be a wearable or a mat of some sort. Then there is the treatment of sleep. So I think a lot of those wrist-based devices in the early years were counting how many hours that you would sleep for, and the goal would be 7.5 hours. Now sleeping sensors have moved to measuring the type of sleep, and there's 5 different types of sleep. The good sleep really comes down to 2 types, which is deep sleep and REM sleep. Some people will call deep sleep shortwave sleep. That's another term for it. And your goal as an individual is to get as much deep sleep and REM sleep as you can, and one of them helps recover the brain and the other one helps recover the body. And if you're not getting good sleep, and if you don't come down to those levels, you won't recover. And if you don't recover, you won't be able to perform well physically from a training perspective, or if you're an executive or an office worker, you won't be able to perform as well from a mental clarity perspective. And so the sensors are going down that path now. And one thing I noticed yesterday was that they're all referencing these new studies that have come out, which are proving that proper sleep, and they refer to it as sleep hygiene, right? So proper sleep hygiene is causal to lower health risks. They've been touting lower risk of dementia and Alzheimer's, and a few other, without going back to my notes, a few other health benefits as well. So yeah, that wave is well and truly coming through.
Right. I was walking around the trade show area, and seen a number of companies, some they're actually sort of able to, claiming that they can take, work out your sort of calories and nutrition from a watches, and you obviously got the sleep. Are you seeing the sophistication of some of these sort of, I guess, what are they, chips or sensors are improving at quite a rapid rate, would you say now?
Yeah, I think on one of the panels earlier today, before I saw you walk into that wearables one, was the founder of that company. I forget their name now, but it is a sensor on the wrist that will count your calorie intake, and it is about 84% accurate, which is not that accurate, but it will get more accurate over time. And it is to take the friction out of our clients in the fitness industry going to MyFitnessPal and physically recording every single meal. We all know that it's a great idea, but really hard to execute on over time. But if you're in the world of calories in and calories out, a device like this that will get more and more accurate is really frictionless and has a huge market to address. Yeah. To answer your other question, look, sensors around the wrist. One speaker actually mentioned how clumsy that was, and that the sensors are really going to be going down the path of patches, so invisible patches that won't really be an eyesore to you. Others spoke about digestibles, and I went down to that booth and had a look, and this one's not yet on the market, but it is it's a digestible that will be given to you in a pill form. You will swallow it, and it will, as it goes through your digestive system, it will give feedback through Bluetooth to your phone, and it's sensing temperature. It's a bit like a stethoscope, and picking up feedback from your gut. We all know how important the gut is, and predictive of health, and it's going right to the source to give feedback. And so the message around sensors is basically that we're not going to have fewer sensors, we're going to have more sensors. And this is a very convenient place to display information, but not a convenient place to sense information. It's very clumsy. Right, okay. So the sensors will be placed in clothing. That's a wave coming through at the moment where it will be integrated and embedded into clothing. You will be ingesting them. You will be putting them on as patches, and then the display might still be here on your watch giving you feedback because that's convenient, but the sensor won't be.
So it seems, again, walking around the show, which is just enormous.
Yeah.
The health, fitness, and wellness seems to be, again, quite a big part, but there's none of the players that probably you and I would, being from the traditional space, would see. Do you think that we're going to get kind of more tech companies moving into, I suppose, our world of the traditional health and fitness industry? Do you see that that's spilling over, or do you see people from the traditional health and fitness industry coming into this space? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, good question. The people that I've spoken to, they're all about direct to consumer. They really are. Because they're backed by VC funds, and VC funds will value a company based on how big the market is, the addressable market. They're all addicted to this concept of direct to consumer, and none of them are talking about working with the industry to go through a brick and mortar portal to exercises.
Interesting.
So then you spin it the other way. Will our industry come here to learn, develop, and innovate? I've seen a number of people from the industry here this last few days, including yourself, Matt, but it's down on recent years. We had a dinner last night before you got in, and the dinner was half the size as it was 2 or 3 years ago for whatever reason. And maybe that is that the commercial fitness space have had such a run in the last 5 years in terms of technology, and they're just trying to now adopt it and apply it the right way, and new innovation is not required. Maybe it's because it's January and they're all just really busy, and the industry's flying and they just don't have time right now. But either way, I think it's important for our industry to visit these type of shows outside our industry, because if they're after growth, then they have to be after innovation, and not all innovation is technology, but a lot of it is technology, and this is the cutting edge of it.
Yeah, and I was talking to Emma as well earlier about the players in this space are big, very well-funded companies that seem to be chucking millions at some of these ideas, and it seems to be moving at such a rapid rate. What are your thoughts or advice or ideas that you could give to people, again, from a traditional bricks and mortar world, of how to play into this area? Is it partnerships, collaboration? Is it raising some money and investing in their own ideas? How do you see things? Panning out over the next sort of 5 to 10 years?
Okay, so that reminds me of a conversation 3-4 hours ago. So Fitbit sold recently, as most people would know, to Google. And there was a bidding war between Google and Facebook. And everyone knows who Fitbit are. And Fitbit track data, basically how active you are, they gamify it and they change your behavior. And that's what data has been used for to date with Fitbit. Leaderboards, status ranking, drive your behavior, and of course that's what we do at Myzone. We use the data to drive positive behavior. However, the reason there was such a bidding war between Google and Facebook, and the guy that negotiated on behalf of Facebook was Zuckerberg himself, right? So that's how important he saw this deal. Even though it was just a $2 billion deal, which is pocket change for Facebook, he saw it as a strategic opportunity. And he ended up losing out, of course, to Google. And is it because data is used to drive behavior and all this good stuff? No, it's not. It's because they wanted the data to marry up with other data so that they could then be predictive. And without getting too geeky about it, it's about doing a massive regression analysis to be predictive about certain behaviors, because when you can be predictive, you can take advantage of looking around corners and grabbing opportunities that you can't see otherwise, and also preventing downside risk with interventions. And that's what Facebook are after, and that's what Google are after. They're after the data, and it's not about more data of the one data point, it's about more data points. And the more data points you can get, the more accurate you can get with your prediction, and that's where the value is. So to come back and answer your question, I would urge club operators to take a similar sort of approach, that the 101 is about using data, just like with Myzone, to give feedback and to motivate members to do more so they stay engaged, but then to ask the question, how can I marry up Myzone data or any other data with my CRM, with my lead management, with my net promoter score through Medallia or an MXM or whoever it may be? How can we marry it all up in a big data warehouse and put a big regression analysis over the top of it, where you've got dependent variables and independent variables, where you can sit there and say, okay, given the correlation of these variables, we know that member who joined up in January of a given month has done X amount of exercise, has decreased in exercise in the last 30 days by 50%, has purchased childcare, has purchased a 10-pack of training but only used 2 of them. We know that based on all of that data that they are a 80% risk of cancelling in the next 30 days, so let's intervene here and let's save that downside risk. That's why everyone says that data is the new oil, and that's why Fitbit had a bidding war between 2 of the biggest companies in the world, in Facebook and Google.
Fantastic. Well, Emmett, thanks for the insight, and I'll look forward to seeing you at another event somewhere around the world.
That's right. We're having a beer at 5:45 at the Grand Lux if you want to come.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So here with David Shaw from Growth, Fitness and Design. What are you doing at CES?
I've been coming to CES for years, Matthew. So I've been in fitness for 30 years, but I do have a high-tech background. So prior to fitness, I was actually in the military and had a secret clearance. Worked on infrared, night vision, thermal imagers, has computer systems, laser systems, so somewhat of a geek.
So you're a bit of a geek.
I'm a bit of a geek. I've definitely dressed up at Comic-Con with the kids and walked around, so I'm definitely up that level. But looking for the latest and greatest, the newest, most innovative products, and definitely CES is a home for that.
Right. What have you seen over that 7-year period? Have you seen things come and go, or is it an evolution of what was happening 7 years ago? Because my feeling is it's a very fast-paced industry and always moving forward. What's your experience over that period?
It is. Wearables is definitely a big part of CES. So as wearables, sensors become smaller, they become more integrated in the clothing. Is something we're seeing more and more at CES. With wearables becoming smaller, less power is needed also. So that's how they're able to integrate them in the clothing, but also what they're able to detect. So looking at whether it's sweat or whatever it might be to see where you're at as far as what you're doing workout-wise and give you that data from there.
Right, okay. And what do you see in terms of specific fitness? Like you design, build and advise and consult a lot of traditional fitness industries
right.
in the hospitality world and others. What do you think that's happening here that's relevant to those traditional fitness, commercial fitness spaces?
For the gym owner, CES isn't really a big show to walk around. It's not really where you'll see a lot of fitness products, even though, Tonal, we just took a look at, very innovative product, very interesting. And there was an article from Intel a few years back, and they showed the gym of the future, and all the weight machines were mounted on the wall. So no more weight stacks. So I actually got to send that over to the guys at Tonal. They were inquiring about that article. But definitely a direction the industry could move, and products like that of how it might affect the actual gym. If you could kind of imagine not having a giant cable crossover or a jungle gym in the middle of the floor, how much more space you could have to bring in different types of workouts. So, products like that are definitely innovative at CES. There's a few other companies, Echelon's here, but it's finding those little niche companies also, like a smart yoga mat.
Right, okay.
Something like that. I don't know if you saw that today.
No, I didn't know.
So they were down in the Eureka Park last year, but now they're actually finally shipping the product. And so as you move on a yoga mat, it's going to tell you how to move, but also sense how you do that movement and correct you by having sensors built into the mat. So interesting products, looking at stuff like that.
Yeah, and there was a lot of talk about data. I've been in some of the sessions this afternoon, and they were talking about a lot of the big companies that have got all of this data and what they can do with it. How do you think things like sensors and the collection of data will be relevant for, again, some of the brands that you probably work with? Is that something that they need to be mindful of and getting involved in some way, do you think?
Yeah, as far as being able to capture that data, so if you can, create a more effective workout by pulling that data and have a better experience, that's what it's all about. So saving time, more efficient movements of how you're training, safer. Being able to capture some different movements. There's a company that has, I don't know if you saw it also, they have dots. So the dot itself actually is its self-contained unit for an accelerometer and also for movement. So their whole thing is they're looking for companies to build the software, actually use that data that they're capturing to build programs. So whether you're an athlete, being able to track an athlete, so you don't have to have a bank of cameras doing motion capture with dots on them. These little sensors are actually all self-contained and sending that data from each individual sensor. Right. So if you're able to, put those on someone and have them swing a kettlebell, or whatever other type of movement you want them to do and have it correct it and then show them that movement of what they should be doing, it's interesting. Right.
Have you seen any new and interesting trends this year that you haven't seen in the past that have popped up at the show?
I've only been here about a half a day so far, so there's still a lot to cover. Mm-hmm. I think, and you haven't been over yet to the other side, to the Las Vegas Convention Center.
No.
So that's where, I think VR and AR, we'll see a lot of stuff come out of there. I don't know if you follow much on the virtual reality side of fitness.
No.
So there's a lot of data coming out of like San Francisco State, the university's done a lot of testing. So once you wear a VR goggle and you're exercising or working out, perceived exertion is less.
Really?
And on average about 20%. So if you're able to work out harder and longer, but not feel like you did, that could be a game changer in our industry.
Yeah.
But it comes down to wearing a pair of VR goggles in the middle of the gym. What companies are going to be able to, how that's going to fit logistically in a fitness center, and how they're going to be able to implement it, and then what that programming is you're doing wearing those goggles.
Right. Yeah, I actually saw a boxing concept downstairs where there was a boxing bag, and you could see a guy on the screen, and you was basically hitting this guy, and
right.
I didn't put the goggles on, but I should imagine that's quite an interesting experience. But I take your point. It's in a gym. Do you think the gym of the future is everyone's going to be wearing some kind of glasses? Do you think that's how it will be, or will the glasses get a bit more intelligent? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm looking at different immersion technology and products also. So when we design fitness centers, we're also looking at stuff from Epson and LG. So we're looking at low throw projectors, being able to project, say, a beach scene on the room where you're doing yoga or mindfulness or meditation. So actually be able to project scenes on the wall, or looking at film from LG where we're able to project images through the film onto the windows or the wall. So immersion is also very close to VR of what we're seeing. So if you have a yoga room where you have the whole entire wall be the beach, you're bringing in sounds and smells, it gets you also closer to, I think, what that VR state is.
Right. Yeah. I think you're right. I think that could be interesting to I suppose enhance the experience rather than just painted walls and pictures. Is making it a little bit more
immersive,
virtual reality kind of thing.
Yeah.
What do you think in terms of some of the players in this space? And you've been involved in, I guess, the traditional fitness space for a number of years as well. But do you see a lot more of these sort of tech-based companies moving in to the gyms? And in the next 5 years, will people like the Tonals that we've just been in? Do you think those will be bigger, have a bigger presence in that world compared to what they are today? Because we were talking earlier that you don't see any of the traditional fitness brands that you would see at an Ursa, for example.
Yep.
And I just wondered why that is.
Yeah, CES is a great show. You won't see a lot of fitness products. There's definitely a few here, Tonal and Echelon. But you'll see a lot of products of what people are going to wear in the gym. So the wearable products, possibly some of the clothing. And then if you've got the insight to look at some of the technology, you might see some of that technology that might be implemented in a product from Technogym, say in a year or two down the road. So sensors on a product, things like that. So this is a good show for that, but not so much for seeing and working out on fitness equipment.
No. And just touching on the interest, this tonal product, I've seen sort of videos and stuff on Instagram, but never actually touched on it. I was quite impressed. What's your thoughts on that as an idea? Because I know you're sort of putting those in some of the clients' facilities that you're working with.
Right. Yeah, I was very impressed when I tried it out about 6 months ago. So electromechanical resistance, and that's how they're able to get it so thin. They're probably the 5th or 6th company I've seen try to put something out like that. Life Fitness, I don't know if you remember the old Life Circuit from Life Fitness.
Yeah, I do actually.
Yeah, that was an old piece, and that was using an actual motor. So it was using a large motor, almost similar to a treadmill motor, to give you resistance in that unit. But the electromechanical, the issue's always been consistency and being able to have a heavy weight. So whatever they've done, I think they've worked that out, because from training on it myself, it's been consistent all the way through. So they should have a hit with that.
And what about the content side? Because a big part of this particular product here seems to be the sort of virtual trainer that guides you through different workouts. What do you see on that side of things from a content perspective?
Yeah, talking about the industry as a whole, so Peloton definitely opened up the doors for a lot of these companies. So looking at that subscription base and then based on content, that revenue model, I think has definitely opened the floodgates for a lot of companies and products to enter into our space. The thing is they're focused, of course, on retail and consumers. So it's going to be how they take maybe some of those products and how they transition to the fitness center with a commercial model.
Yeah. It was interesting. I was chatting to Emmett about this as well, and seems to say that a lot of the investment or the people investing in these companies seem to be very keen on that direct-to-consumer model as opposed to
the health club.
Yeah, maybe that's because it's a much smaller market. Do you think that's probably why they're not getting involved in that area? Do you think?
I think so. Yeah, when you're looking at quantities of product shipped to the retail consumer and having that subscription base, it's different of how you might implement like a subscription-based model for a commercial club with, say, additional content. Maybe if you had a different tier membership to unlock some of that, maybe that could bring in some players with some different type of content and workouts and product.
Yeah, interesting. Well, David, thank you very much.
Excellent.
And you actually kind of inspired me to come here. I saw your video last year, so that's one of the reasons why I'm here. So
excellent.
Thanks very much and enjoy the rest of the show.
You too. Thank you, Matthew.
I could probably speak for about an hour giving reasons as why this sort of event and what's going on here is important, but I thought I would just share a couple of takeaways with you in case it inspires you to find out more, and then to tell you a little bit about what we actually did here. So first thing we did is I wanted to come to just to see what players are in the market, what was going on, what was happening in this sort of tech world, because when I came here, I found that there was none of the what I would call traditional fitness industry companies. There was really nobody that I'd heard of before actually at the event, and yet there was this expanding, mushrooming industry that a lot of people were putting a serious amount of money in, but it was very, very disconnected from what I would call the traditional fitness world. So the first thing that stuck out to me is, well, why are these worlds not a lot more connected than what they were? Because this space seems to be growing. There seems to be a lot more innovation than a lot of the traditional fitness shows that I went before. So that was one of the things that stood out. Upon speaking to a lot of the small companies and startups that have developed some really innovative products here, I learned, I guess that the big takeaway for me is I learned a lot about data and the importance of data. And one of the ladies that I spoke to from a company called Tonal told me about how most of the fitness equipment historically was very analog. So it was a machine, you went on it, it provided you with very little in the way of feedback or data that you could actually use both to improve the products and also to improve the experience for the user. So one of my big takeaways and one of the things to think about is how, as an industry, we can use data, use what they call machine learning to both improve your actual product that you're offering to the market, but also to improve the user experience. So the information that you're getting is learning a lot more about the user that's interacting with it, providing an enhanced level of experience and feedback to the person that's actually interacting with your product. So whether that's from a manufacturer's perspective, whether you're developing hardware and you want to make that hardware better and you want to be able to provide a better level of service for the user, or whether you're providing a service itself and you have a client that's interacting with that service, how can you access data from the product or service, and how can you improve what that product or service will be in the next month, 6 months, or 12 months. So data and machine learning was a really big takeaway. And then the second one, which I think is really, really important, and I would encourage anybody in the traditional fitness world to seek out, is collaboration. The tech space in terms of, I guess, technology, software and sensors is developing at a massive rate, and not just for the fitness and wellness world, but for everything from cars to shopping to pets to you name it. There's an application for the software and devices. But one of the things that I've certainly found in the fitness space is that there's some fantastic technology and sensors available that can do more than your mind is capable of even imagining. Certainly from my perspective, the potential of what you can actually do outstrips my imagination. But one of the things that these companies are lacking is the actual expertise and content to make them useful. So great, you've got all this ability to measure so many different things for the human body in terms of what the human body does and what the human body can do and predict what the human body is likely to do next. But who's able to take that information and make recommendations about what you should be doing in order to lose weight, get stronger, improve your health, help you to live longer? The companies that have this technology don't have those relationships to really provide them with information to utilize that data. So what I'd suggest is have a listen to this podcast and think about your business or think about what you do and think about how you can collaborate with some of these tech companies, because there's certainly a need for collaboration. And I think the businesses that I've spoke to that are collaborating, where you've got a real expert in a particular field, whether it's meditation, whether it's lifting weights, whether it's cardiovascular training, combining that with what technology and data gives you, is you create something that's truly amazing. I've certainly come away seeing probably more opportunities than I can imagine. In fact, I'm in a little bit of a sort of a tailspin as to say, well, you know, what do you focus on and where do you go next? Because there's so many, I guess, opportunities that we can certainly look at. So I'd love to get your feedback about some of the information that we've shared. Love to know whether you find any of this valuable, and I'll be very interested to hear what you find has stood out, any things that you've recognized or noticed that are worth sharing. And you know, I just really hope that you've got as much value out of this sort of virtual experience of what we have from coming here. And I would definitely recommend for next year, for probably 2021, if you've got the opportunity to come along here and just to check it out, because it certainly put my thinking and my recommendations to myself and the people that work in my business has definitely put me in a very, very different space to what I was when I came here. So hope you enjoyed this episode, and please let me know what you think. Thanks very much for listening. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.